Hello everyone, my name is Yewen, and today I'm going to introduce the project we're doing this semester. Our team members include Vedant, Gabriel, me, and Zixin. So let's get started. As a brief introduction of our project, we'll be trying to answer some big questions that arises in COVID-19 vaccination distribution. As the vaccination has been developed, many big questions came up, and one of them is who should be vaccinated first? And furthermore, we'll be hoping to try to answer the questions such as what decides the order and what we can learn from it. As a formal problem statement, the question we're trying to answer is how to prioritize different age groups for vaccine distribution in a system where one group is vaccinated at a time. As a common sense, also one of the common adopted strategies for research, we'll be splitting the population to 4 age groups, which is 0 to 18, 18 to 30, 30 to 55, and 55 plus. In this project, we'll be using 2 categories of methodologies. The first category will include decision matrix, minimize regret, and normalization. We'll be using these technologies to help answer the question and hopefully order the age groups. And then we'll be using another set of strategy, which is the ratio of death and loss of workforce for each age group. You'll be seeing this a lot in the further presentation. And we'll, in the end, compare those 2 methodologies and hopefully present some insights behind which one is better. And then I'm going to give the floor to my other teammates to further introduce the project.
So we created a model based on a decision matrix that would basically make a decision on which age group to vaccinate based on 4 variables that we thought were the most important. The first variable was the contact rate. The second was the fatality rate. The third is the type of employment, and fourth is how much of the population in that age group has already got the virus. Once we created a decision matrix with these 4 variables for all the age groups, we would choose the age group to vaccinate first. Then we would remove the age group from the decision matrix, update the data for all the other age groups, and iteratively continue with the process till we get an order of which age groups to vaccinate. So here we have the data for the contact rate. This kind of shows how many people and a person from a particular age group comes in contact with every day from other age groups. So that means that someone from an age group of 0 to 18 on average comes in contact with 16 other people who don't belong to the 0 to 18 age group every day. This kind of relates to the whole transmittability of the virus. So if we vaccinate an age group which meets other age groups more frequently, we would reduce the transmission of the virus. Then secondly, we looked at the fatality rate, which is one of the biggest variables in decision making related to vaccines. Here we can see that we've taken 0 to 18 as the reference group, and we have calculated how much the risk of fatality for other age groups based on the 0 to 18 age group. Then we have the type of employment where the ability for a member of an age group to not work online increases, we would want to vaccinate that age group more. So for instance, the 30 to 55 age group has the highest proportion of people who would not be able to work online, and hence getting them vaccinated first would make more sense. And then lastly, we look at how how the proportion of population for a particular age group that has already got the virus. So if they've already got the virus, they have some immunity, and hence we would try to vaccinate the age group which has least contracted the virus in order to prevent the spread of the virus more. One thing to note here is that when we normalized this data, we accounted for the chances that a person in 0 to 18, the age group of 0 to 18 has to get the virus uh, by a factor of 1.5, because according to CDC guidelines and all the research that has been done, any member from the age group 0 to 18 has about 1.5 times less chances of getting the virus even when he comes in contact with someone who has the virus. So after normalizing all the data using using minimax scaling, we have this is the decision matrix that we came up with, and then creating a regret table based on the decision matrix we had, and using minimax regret, we see that we would first vaccinate the 30 to 55 age group. And then for the second iteration, we just followed the same process, excluding the 30 to 55 age group. We also changed the data based on uh, based on the scenario that the 30 to 55 age group is already vaccinated. And then once we did that, we found out that we would vaccinate the 55 plus age group next. And then for the third iteration, we are just left with two age groups, 0 to 18 and 18 to 30. And you can clearly see that we would vaccinate the 18 to 30 age group before vaccinating the 0 to 18 age group. Hence, we come up with an order in which we would be vaccinating the entire population, which is vaccinating the 30 to 55 age group, followed by the 55 plus age group, then the 18 to 30 age group, and then the 0 to 18 age group.
So next, we have our second model, where we decided to look into the impact to the economy for each age group. So we use this simple model where it's the cost of the economy for each age group is the number of death per day times the cost of per death plus the number of loss of workforce per day for each age group times the cost of per loss of workforce. So alpha times x is the number of death per day, and beta times x is the number of loss of workforce per day for each age group. X is the number of new cases per day, and C1 is the cost of per death, and C2 is the cost of per loss of workforce. To find alpha, we just have to take the percentage of cases for each age group, and then multiply it by the death rate for each age group, which is the number of deaths divided by the number of cases. And then for beta, we just have to multiply percentage of cases for each age group times the percentage of age group that is employed in California, which is on the right side of the table. From there, we can get alpha, and we get the following alpha and beta, where we can see that beta is relatively higher compared to alpha. Next, we have to find other parameters. The cost of death is we estimated to be roughly around the cost, the GDP of each person, which is $127,000. The cost of loss of workforce, which is around the average, we set it to the average monthly wage in California. This is because we assume that if you are sick, you probably don't go to work for a month. The current daily new cases right now is about like 2,000. But when it's spiking, it can go up. It goes up to 40,000. So that's what we set for our other parameters. So for this matrix, for the nose, for our alternative, we set the for age group which one we want to vaccinate first, and then for the outcomes, we set it for no spike is when the daily cases is around 2,000, and the spike is when it's around 40,000. And we calculated the result is the cost to the economy. And for our assumption is that if you vaccinate someone, a age group, they immediately get vaccinated, and that's the cost will be the savings that you get. And from this table, we can see that age 55 is dominates other age group. Other alternatives as well. This is largely, I think, due to the fact that our model is kind of linear in comparison to the number of cases. So since it's bigger in no spike, then it will always be bigger in other number of cases.
There are a couple of limitations to our project. For the first model, the data that we used to fill the decision matrices are prone to error. Again, we filled the data based on literature review, and we rescaled the data using normalization. But in reality, there are a lot of variations, and there might be a lot of more columns or more variables than what we have, which is only 4. So again, this is not stable in that sense. And it's hard to assign weights to variables of different categories for comparison. The normalization that we adopted, which is to convert numbers from 0 to 1, might not be the best strategy. Also, there is the issue of high time complexity. The more subjective probabilities, the more challenge it is to maintain the stability of the model. For our second model, it is an oversimplification and did not take into account of how the case number would affect the number of new cases and death rate. Again, there are many limitations to our model, and we hope that research in the future might take into account of our limitations and better improve it.
Conclusion: contrary to the current policy that prioritizes the safety of the most age group, our first model suggests the importance of vaccinating mid-age group to bring down infection and contact rate, helping to control the COVID spread of the whole community. However, our second model agrees with the current policy as the model highly values death. The current policy helping the most vulnerable age group adhere to Rawls' theory of justice as fairness, which means we promote the advantage of the least advantaged member of the society. However, our approach looks at a more comprehensive goal of both individual and community safety, and we aim to maximize the utility for everyone, thus giving a utilitarian view of this decision problem. And in the end, there are citation of resources which you can look up if you're interested. And thank you for watching our presentation.